The debut of the bent-wing beast. February 12, 1943. Henderson Field, Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands. The air over the newly secured American airstrip is thick, muggy, and perpetually stained with the metallic scent of exhaust and the faint, sweet smell of coral dust. The tropical sun beats down on the airfield where the fight for air superiority in the Solomons is still a knife-edge affair. You are standing near a cluster of Marine ground crew, their faces streaked with sweat and grime, watching the arrival of the newest American fighter. It's loud, enormous, and distinctly odd. This is the American F4U Corsair, and it looks like nothing else in the sky. The aircraft taxis in, its massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine sputtering and popping as it idles. The engine is so large, in fact, that the propeller necessitates the fighter's defining feature, the distinctive, inverted gull wings. The main landing gear, retracted beneath the bent section of the wings, give the whole machine a bulky, awkward profile on the ground. It appears less like a sleek raptor and more like a muscular, grumpy bulldog. The Marine pilots standing nearby, veterans of the bitter Wildcat vs. Zero duels, eye the new machine skeptically. Their current mounts, the F4F Wildcats, are dependable, but they are slow and lack the climb rate needed to effectively counter the nimble Mitsubishi A6M0. They need speed and altitude, but this thing looks heavy. Meanwhile, just north, at a forward Japanese airbase near Bougainville, the first grainy intelligence photographs of the new American fighter are being circulated among the elite Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service (IJNA's) pilots. Lieutenant Saburo Kato, a highly decorated pilot with 18 confirmed kills, examines the photograph with a mixture of amusement and disdain. He points to the Corsair's wide fuselage and large cowling. "Look at this monstrosity," Kato says, tapping the picture. "It looks like they bolted the wings onto a flying brick. Such weight." They prioritize armor and size over maneuverability, as always. His colleague, Warrant Officer Masaru Abe, nods, a slight, superior smile on his face. The Americans still fail to grasp the art of air combat. Speed is useless if you cannot turn. Our Zero is a samurai sword, light, sharp, and quick. This Vought is merely a crude, heavy hammer. The pilots quickly coined their first mocking nickname for the F4U, Hemp, a deliberate mispronunciation of the Vought fighter's name, used to deride its bulk and supposed sluggishness. They were confident. The Zero had defeated everything thrown at it so far, relying on its unparalleled agility and light construction. The first reports of the Corsair's actual performance from reconnaissance flights only deepened the mystery and the mockery. It was fast, faster than the Zero in level flight by a wide margin, but it also had a complicated stall behavior, a harsh landing reputation, and, critically, it was currently deemed unsuitable for carrier operations due to poor visibility over the nose and tendency to bounce on landing. The U.S. Navy, the primary intended customer, had rejected it for carrier duty and shunted the first production models off to the Marine Corps for land-based operations in the Solomons. To the Japanese, this was final proof the F4U was a technical failure. They were eager to meet this heavy, unrefined challenger and prove their mastery of the skies. They saw a fat target, a bulky machine built for brute force, not finesse. They completely overlooked what that brute force was capable of, especially when unleashed from the high-altitude advantage. The vertical advantage and the 6 guns they saw a fat target, a bulky machine built for brute force, not finesse. They completely overlooked what that brute force was capable of, especially when unleashed from the high-altitude advantage. The first serious engagements pitting the Zero against the Corsair, F4U-1, occurred over the Russell Islands and Guadalcanal in the spring of 1943. VMF-124, the first Marine squadron to fly the F4U, quickly established the new fighter's revolutionary combat characteristics the Japanese failed to predict based on the aircraft's aesthetics. The key was the immense power of the Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine, which generated over $2,000 horsepower $. This colossal power plant, which necessitated the bulky cowling and the huge $13 foot propeller, gave the Corsair 2 crucial advantages: speed and climb rate. While the Zero, especially the A6M2 and A6M3 models common in 1943, was capable of unmatched turning, it couldn't compete with the Corsair's straight-line speed of over $400 miles per hour, or its breathtaking ability to climb. The best Zero pilots, using their finely honed skills and the fighter's minimal weight, would try to lure the Corsair into a close-in horizontal turning fight. This was the Zero's domain, where the Corsair, due to its higher wing loading and weight, would quickly lose energy and become vulnerable. However, the Marine pilots, under the tutelage of veterans and early doctrine developers, were specifically told never to dogfight the Zero. Instead, they adopted the hit-and-run tactics pioneered by the Wildcat pilots, but with lethal new speed. The Corsair excelled in the vertical plane. It could dive, attack, and zoom away faster than the Zero could even register the threat. The Japanese pilots found that if they tried to climb to intercept the Corsairs, the American fighters would simply power away into the altitude ceiling where the Zero's non-supercharged engine began to starve. Lieutenant Kato, leading a sortie over the Solomons in April 1943, experienced this tactical shift firsthand. Spotting a flight of F4Us high above, he ordered an aggressive climb to engage. The Zeros strained, their Seiki engines throttling hard, but the Corsairs simply vanished upwards, maintaining a speed differential that was shocking. Kato's pilots, confident in their turning ability, kept repeating the same fatal mistake, attempting to initiate a turn. The Corsair pilots would instead rely on their second major advantage, firepower. The F4U mounted 6.50-text caliber Browning machine guns in its wings. Unlike the Zero's smaller $7.70-text guns, the concentrated mass of 6 heavy machine guns delivered an overwhelming volume of destructive force. During one engagement, a Japanese pilot pulled hard into a turn to evade a diving Corsair. The American pilot, Captain Joe Foss, instead of following the turn, fired a short burst while still in a steep dive. The sheer kinetic energy of the 50-text caliber shells, combined with their weight, ripped through the Zero's thin, unarmored structure. The Zero did not just catch fire, it disintegrated. The Japanese had mocked the Corsair's bulk, but that bulk was necessary to carry the powerful engine and the crushing armament that immediately flipped the power dynamic. The flying brick was, in fact, an armored battering ram. Whistling death and the learning curve. The flying brick was, in fact, an armored battering ram. The tactical reality of the F4U Corsair's capabilities rapidly filtered through the ranks of the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service, IJNAs, replacing mockery with a grudging respect, and eventually, a deep fear. The initial dismissive nicknames like Hemp gave way to a more ominous moniker, Whistling Death. This nickname, attributed to the unique, high-pitched whistling sound the Corsair's leading-edge air intakes made during high-speed dives, perfectly encapsulated the terror of its hit-and-run tactics. Japanese pilots, conditioned by years of turning dogfights against slower American and Allied fighters, struggled to adapt. They continued to instinctively try to engage the Corsair in close-quarters horizontal maneuvers, a tactic that almost always proved fatal. The Corsair pilots, disciplined by experience and training, steadfastly refused to engage in turn fights. Their strategy was simple and brutal: climb, dive, shoot, zoom away. This constant energy advantage allowed them to dictate every engagement, choosing when and how to strike. Lieutenant Saburo Kato, initially so dismissive, found his squadron's combat effectiveness plummeting. He watched his veteran pilots, men who had previously scoffed at the flying brick, fall victim to the Corsair's speed and devastating firepower. In a desperate attempt to counter, Japanese doctrine began to shift, albeit slowly and painfully. Pilots were instructed to avoid head-on passes, where the Corsair's 6.50-text caliber guns were overwhelming, and to attempt to lure Corsairs into very low-speed engagements, often near airfields, where the Zero's agility might still provide an edge. But these were desperate, reactive measures. The Corsair itself was not without its faults, beyond its initial carrier unsuitability. It was a demanding aircraft to fly, especially for inexperienced pilots. Its powerful engine generated massive torque, requiring careful rudder input on takeoff. Its long nose severely restricted forward visibility during ground operations and carrier landings, earning it the early unflattering nickname of Ensign Eliminator among American pilots. However, these were issues that could be mitigated with training and experience, or eventually engineered away. The core combat performance, speed, climb, and firepower remained unmatched by the Zero. The battle for air superiority was a learning curve for both sides, but the Americans, with a fundamentally superior aircraft design, were learning faster. They realized the Corsair's strength was its ability to control the vertical dimension of the battle. Japanese pilots, on the other hand, were forced to grapple with a new reality where their traditional strengths were being systematically negated. The steady accumulation of operational losses and the inability to reliably counter the F4U forced the IJNAs to commit more of its dwindling resources to defensive patrols and to constantly scramble to produce new, high-performance fighters like the Kawasaki Ki-61 Hien, Tony, or Mitsubishi J2M Raiden, Jack. But these new designs were too few, too late, and still often outmatched. The whistling death had exposed a fundamental flaw in the Japanese design philosophy. Sacrificing protection and raw power for maneuverability had, in the face of the Corsair, become a liability. Carrier qualification and Pacific dominance. The whistling death had exposed a fundamental flaw in the Japanese design philosophy. Sacrificing protection and raw power for maneuverability had, in the face of the Corsair, become a liability. By late 1944, the F4U Corsair had cemented its reputation as the most potent piston-engined fighter in the Pacific, dominating land-based operations from the Solomons to the Marianas. Yet, the final barrier to total dominance, carrier-based operations, was finally broken, fundamentally altering the strategic balance of the air war. The British Royal Navy, receiving their own versions of the Corsair, known as the Corsair Mk2, had pioneered modifications and landing techniques that overcame the worst of the fighter's deck handling issues. Crucially, they adopted a wave-off system for landing and trained pilots to approach the deck in a flat, curved trajectory that kept the deck in sight despite the aircraft's long nose. The U.S. Navy finally recognized these successes and approved the F4U for use aboard its own fleet carriers. The introduction of the carrier-qualified F4U-1D and later versions onto American decks meant that the full force of whistling death could now project hundreds of miles closer to the Japanese home islands. The Japanese High Command, which had clung to the hope that the Corsair's operational limitations would keep it confined to island bases, was now faced with an overwhelming concentration of these fast, heavily armed fighters operating directly over their remaining strongholds. The combination of the Corsair, the F-6F Hellcat, and the ever-improving American training cycle led to a devastating disparity in combat results. During the intense battles over the Philippines, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, the Corsair's superiority became quantitative as well as qualitative. The fighter ended the war with an impressive kill-to-loss ratio of 11-1, an extraordinary figure that underscored just how completely the flying brick had mastered the Zero. The superiority was not just in performance but in pilot protection. The Corsair, built with the American philosophy of ruggedness, included a heavily armored cockpit floor, self-sealing fuel tanks, and a robust structure. When hit by the Zero's light $7.70 $mm machine guns or even the $20 $mm cannon, the Corsair often absorbed the damage and brought the pilot home. Warrant Officer Masaru Abe, who had mocked the Corsair's weight in 1943, was eventually shot down by an F4U over Okinawa. He later recalled his shock at seeing his $20 $mm shells impact the Corsair's wing without destroying it, a hit that would have instantly annihilated his own lightly built Zero. The mockery was definitively dead. The F4U Corsair's triumph demonstrated that in the evolving air war, raw power and structural resilience, combined with the discipline to exploit the vertical fight, would always defeat maneuverability built upon a foundation of fragility. The flying brick had not just dominated the skies. It had become the symbol of the American industrial and tactical revolution in the Pacific. The post-war assessment and final vindication. The mockery was definitively dead. The F4U Corsair's triumph demonstrated that in the evolving air war, raw power and structural resilience, combined with the discipline to exploit the vertical fight, would always defeat maneuverability built upon a foundation of fragility. The flying brick had not just dominated the skies. It had become the symbol of the American industrial and tactical revolution in the Pacific. Following the Japanese surrender in August 1945, the full scope of the Corsair's impact was revealed during post-war interrogations and technical assessments. American intelligence teams meticulously collected and analyzed captured Japanese air doctrine manuals, pilot reports, and technical critiques, confirming the initial arrogance and the subsequent, painful learning process. Japanese pilots, including veterans like Saburo Kato and others who survived the war, admitted that the F4U Corsair was the single most difficult fighter they faced on a tactical level. They confessed that the combination of its speed and overwhelming firepower, the very characteristics they had dismissed as excessive American brutishness, had rendered their finely tuned turning tactics obsolete. Crucially, the Japanese technical staff, which had proudly prioritized light construction and maneuverability, was forced to confront the vulnerability this philosophy entailed. They recognized, far too late, that the American design philosophy, heavy, robust, and constantly upgradable, allowed the F4U to rapidly incorporate improvements in armament and engine technology, whereas the Zero's airframe had reached its performance limits early on. The Zero simply could not handle the torque or weight of a more powerful engine or the recoil of heavier guns without becoming structurally unstable or losing its famed agility entirely. The final vindication for the flying brick came not just from combat statistics, but from its astonishing operational longevity. Unlike many other World War II fighters that were quickly retired, the F4U Corsair proved its structural and mechanical excellence by continuing to serve in frontline combat roles long after the war. The Corsair saw extensive action with the Marine Corps and Navy in the Korean War, 1950 to 1953, primarily as a devastating close air support (CAS) platform. Its rugged construction, heavy payload capacity, including rockets and bombs, and proven ability to absorb ground fire, characteristics derived from its initial design bulk, made it perfectly suited for the CAS mission. Japanese pilots had mocked its weight. That same weight allowed it to deliver tons of ordnance on target and survive the subsequent damage. The F4U Corsair ultimately flew for over a decade in U.S. service and many years more in the air forces of other nations, becoming the definitive symbol of American air power projection in the Pacific. The story of its introduction, from initial domestic rejection and enemy ridicule to becoming the most feared and highest-scoring piston fighter of the theater, stands as a powerful testament to the necessity of embracing power, protection, and adaptability over superficial aesthetics or outdated doctrine. The laughter had died in the skies over the Solomons, replaced by the sound of whistling death.